Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to the first session of history of the American history. Today our lesson is about the Industrial Revolution. For the do now, what do cities give us that country village could not? And can you come up with 3 reasons altogether? Learning intentions to understand the main factors in the creation of industrial Britain, to describe how the Americans were first copiers then innovators. The success criteria: I can consider the importance of cities. I can prioritize the factors of the Industrial Revolution from most to least important. I can explain personal views on the most important factors. I can create a PowerPoint or an informative poster about one of the American inventions of the Industrial Revolution. So what was the Industrial Revolution? The Industrial Revolution was a time in British history where the country changed hugely from a mostly rural society to an industrial one. This means that many British people moved from living in a small town and village where they were farmers to huge cities where they worked in places such as factories or mills. It's called a revolution because it was such a huge change. The birth of the Industrial Revolution is the birth of the modern world that we know today. A rural is a life in the countryside, and industrial is a life in cities centered around mass production. The 6 factors. There were 6 main factors that came together to create the Industrial Revolution. Unlike political or violent revolutions, the Industrial Revolution happened over a long period of time rather than suddenly. Just like baking a cake, the ingredients for the Industrial Revolution had to be present together at the right time and then left to heat up. So the first factor was the population boom. Between 1750 and 1900, the population of Britain grew by 4 times, from 10 million people to 40 million people. This created problems. How could this population be fed, clothed, and housed? Supply was found to match demand. This increase in population led to many businessmen and innovators finding ingenious solutions whilst making a lot of money. This is a quote by Mustafa Mahmoud. If a Muslim and a non-believer went to swim, the one who knows how to swim will survive. Allah does not favor ignorant people. The ignorant Muslim will drown, while the educated non-believer will survive. So that's how Europe or the European countries and the United States they survived. They survived the population boom. They created new methods. They were innovators. They used their innovators to make inventions for them to make life easier for people to feed their people. So what we all have to ask God for is to enrich us with knowledge. The improved agriculture was the second factor. During this period, farmers became more efficient in order to feed the growing population, using advances such as improved crop rotation, selective breeding of animals, and new machinery. Farmers made the land that had been farmed in a similar way for centuries more efficient. One of the most important early developments was Jethro Tull's seed drill. The seed drill planted seeds quickly and efficiently without the need to do it by hand. The factories is the third factor. It was not only farmers who were developing new machines and ideas. Factories began to be built in the cities to produce goods at a far faster rate than before. People moved from the countryside to the cities to work in them. Woolen cloth and cotton goods had been produced in small amounts in people's homes for centuries. A factory could produce huge amounts of textiles quickly, useful for clothing and increasing population and as trade goods. The power. The first factories were powered by water and used wooden machines. New types of power would lead to bigger and more efficient factories. Coal was mined in large amounts and used to create wrought iron, iron that was tough enough to create large and complex machines. Steam power was a technology that led to innovations such as James Naismith's steam hammer, as well as new forms of transport. The transport. With growth in agriculture and industry, things needed to be moved around the country in large amounts. Canals, such as the Bridgewater Canal, were dug to link growing cities together, in this case, Manchester and Liverpool, and transport goods between them. Roads were improved to make travel by cart easier and faster. Railways were laid to accommodate a new wondrous invention, the steam train. The empire. It was not just at home that Britain grew. The British Empire expanded from a few colonies in 1750 to cover a fifth of the world's land by 1900. Colonies in places such as India, Australia, Canada, and South Africa gave British factories access to exotic resources such as cotton, silk, fur, and tea. By 1900, the empire had a population of around 400 million people, each of these a potential customer for British goods, which pushed production ever onwards. The perfect recipe. When all mixed together, the six factors we have looked at created the Industrial Revolution. Now you have had a chance to see the factors that went into the Industrial Revolution. Right in the This is for the chat box for the class time. As much information as you can. And you can do this anytime at home. The workshop of the world. Britain became known as the workshop of the world by the mid-19th century. Can you explain what this means? Resourcefulness and experimentation. Americans were willing to try anything. They were first copiers, then innovators. In 1841, patents were approved. In 1860, 4,357 patents were approved. Whitney's cotton gin in 1791. It was actually invented by a slave. So this is one of the inventions by the Americans. Whitney's gun factory. Oliver Evans, first prototype of the locomotive, first automated flour mill, John Deere and the steel plow in 1837, Cyrus McCormick and the mechanical repair in 1831, Samuel F.B. Morse in 1840, the telegraph, Cyrus Field and the Transatlantic cable in 1858, Elias Howe and Ishaq Singer, 1840s sewing machine. The American dream. They all regarded material advance as the natural fruit of American republicanism and proof of the country's virtue and promise. A German visitor in the 1840s, Frederick List, observed, anything new is quickly introduced here, including all of the latest inventions. There is no clinging to old ways. The moment an American hears the word invention, he pricks up his ears. Samuel Slater, father of the factory system. The Lowell Waltham system, first dual-purpose textile plant. This is Lowell in 1850. The Lowell Mill. Early textile mill loom floor. Early textile loom. New England textile centers in 1830s. And New England dominance in textiles. Those are the Lowell Girls. What was their typical profile? Lowell boarding houses. What was boarding house life like? Lowell Mills timetable. The early union newsletter. The factory girls Garland. This was written by a factory girl. If you read this, you will know how the life of the factory girls was, how they were working for 13 hours each day, and they didn't have time to rest. And they were breathing the poison air and wishing for windows. They didn't even have windows. They were filled with fear. They were never having enough time to eat, nor to rest their feet. They were wishing for more free time. Their only wish was to have free time. So if you read this, you will know how the life of factory girls was. Regional specialization. So in the east of the country, it was industrial. In the south of the country, it was cotton and slavery. In the west of the country, it was the nation's bread basket. So we can see the regional specialization here. This is the American population centers in 1820. So you can see where the most population was living in the US. And here is the American population centers in 1860. So you can see how other states in America was more populated than before if you compare between the two maps. So you have, for example, Chicago. If we see the map here, the population was under 10,000. Look at Chicago here. It's between 100,000 and 250,000 people were living in Chicago in 1860. Those are additional learning sources. I hope you liked the lesson. And if you have any questions, you can ask your teacher. You can send us a message on MS Teams on Edmodo for now at any time. And we hope you attend all the online sessions. And thank you all for listening.